I'm Captain Cliff, and you're listening to the History of Aviation podcast.
Hello and welcome to the History of Aviation podcast. I'm Derrick Beeler. I hope everybody is having a absolutely wonderful day, whatever day you're listening to this and whatever format you're listening on, because today on episode 78, we're going to talk about runway surfaces. That is right, runway surfaces. And as always, first off, I'm joined by Mr. Julien Martinson. How are you, Julien?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast today. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. And our producer, Shae Jones, our producer slash co-host here, always going along with us. We've got another podcast, Shae, that we talk about history on.
We sure do. And I just want to point out this is week 3 of not being muted. So, yeah, it's amazing.
What a champ, right? So, yeah, so we have a show. If people do not know, me and you are cousins. And
we are, yes.
We have a podcast called most of it.
Yeah.
So we have a podcast called Two Cousins, One Podcast, where we talk about not just aviation history, but we talk about a lot of general aviation history. So we just had a recent one, so there will be a link for that podcast in the description below, and people can go check out some general history stuff there. And we just recorded an interesting one.
Sure enough did. We didn't really conclude all of it as well. It's still, it kind of gets left up in the air, so to speak, towards the end of it. It's definitely, I don't think I've ever talked about anything like that before. So I can't wait to hear some of the comments about that. So
it's going to be a good one. And as we talk about how runways have evolved, Julien, over the years. We know around here in East Tennessee, we just recently talked about the splash-in that I went to, where the state of Tennessee just started seeing a lot of seaplanes with that. Of course, around here, there's a lot of people that have runways in their backyard, which is grass. But let's start initially with asphalt, Julien, which is what we, pretty well know of today.
Right. So the asphalt runway is the one that's the easiest to build because it's made of asphalt, which is that familiar black composite material that we use for the driveways. And so it's very economic and it's very quick to build. Unfortunately, it's not very durable. So the runways that are built with asphalt have a lifespan of maybe 5 to 10 years, as opposed to other materials such as cement that might have a longer lifespan. And so they're quick to build, but because it's not connected material, as the planes hit it numerous times, it will wear out quicker. And so you'll see these types of materials at Toronto Pearson International Airport, Vancouver Airport, and at Gatwick. And so often airports will have a runway rehabilitation program where they resurface certain sections of the airport surface every year on a 5-year rotating basis. And so over a period of 5 years, all of those surfaces will be rehabilitated and refixed for better use. And at the same time, it gives an opportunity to reconstruct the drainage system and the lighting system to accommodate the new policies or safety policies for runway design and configuration. So as the runways evolve and grow, they have better lighting systems and ILS that conform for the landing of aircraft.
Yeah, so as you talk about the pavement aspect of it, which is, like I said, what we know today. So there are some airports that are concrete. Specifically, I don't know anything about concrete. Trust me, I admire the people that pour concrete. They would fire me the first day.
Yeah, so the concrete is it's like cement. So it's It comes with a truck, and it's poured down, and you have metal iron rods laid embedded into the surface of the concrete, and then you pour the concrete down just like you would for a road or a driveway. It's more expensive to build, but the durability is longer as well. So often, concrete runways will last 15 to 25 years. So the longevity is longer and the durability is more with concrete runways, but they're more expensive to build. In many airports, they face runway expansion projects. I know Kelowna Airport and Kamloops Airport went through an expansion project where they extended the runway, and this allows for bigger airplanes to land. So it gives more connectivity to larger aircraft. You'll see concrete in airports such as Los Angeles, Frankfurt, and Dubai International Airport, and they're typically found in high volume use long-haul aircraft applications. And so that's where you're going to see a lot of cement. Most of your international airports, they'll all have cement runways. So concrete runways.
That makes sense too, because I live out in the Northeast, but whenever I travel to the Midwest, Cleveland, Ohio, and all that stuff, you start seeing driveways that are cement and roadways that are cement. And I think that has to do, looking at the list here, these are all warm-ish areas, right? So I think to your point is the cold doesn't really treat cement very well.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as we talk about that, with something that we're talking about in this particular episode, which is gravel runway, which obviously me or Shae have never, I don't think I've personally ever seen a gravel runway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a couple of them out here, but they're usually in rural areas.
Yeah, I've not personally seen a per se gravel runway, but this is also more of a remote type regions like the Yukon and Antarctica.
Well, this is very correct. So in the Arctic, Yukon, Nunavut, Alaska, you will have gravel runways. So it's often in remote areas where asphalt and concrete are not available. They're just too remote to bring that type of material in, and you'll find that in Esquimalt Airport and Fort Simpson Airport are examples of airports that have, or aerodomes, I should say, that have gravel runways. And they're typically used for the aircraft like the Boeing 737-200 Combi. So that's a passenger and cargo combination. And what's interesting with this type of runway configuration is that aircraft will require gravel kits. So this is a type of contraption that is attached, or tool that is attached to the front wheel of the aircraft, and it looks like a flat metal sheet that's attached to the front tires. And so as the tires hit the gravel, the gravel spins up because it's loose. And so the danger is that the gravel can damage the aircraft, or more importantly, damage the engines. And so another thing that is visible for gravel kits, you'll see a little tube protruding underneath the engine, and it blows air. And so as the aircraft lands, air is blown out of these tubes, and it pushes the gravel downward, preventing the gravel to be sucked into the engines. Gravel are little rocks, and they can be ingested into the aircraft engine. And as you know, aircraft engines, they have propellers or blades. And so if those little stones get sucked into the engine, it can cause damage to the engine. And so to prevent that, they have these little air nozzles that come out. And so there are pictures available on these types of gravel kits. They're available on YouTube. For those people that are interested, you can look online or on YouTube and find images that illustrate this.
So they're almost like aviation versions of mud flaps, kind of.
Yeah.
Just for stones and stuff.
Exactly, you got it.
Nice.
It is, and I don't want to stir up any controversy, but I'm just a country boy from Tennessee. But help me wrap my brain around why there's a such thing as gravel runway when you have to modify the aircraft like you do.
Well, the location is very remote, and so it's for small villages. Small villages up north, for example, where you have 500 people and they need to bring in cargo supplies. And so they'll build a runway to bring in airlift and cargo supplies to the village. And so
is that not a grass runway because of a ground issue?
Well, they're distinctly different. Gravel runways are made of loose stone. Right. And grass runways you'll see often in rural areas, but they're made of turf. And so you'll also see this in regions such as Cotswold Gliding Club or the small town GA fields across Canada, where the runway is made of turf or grass. And so these are also rural communities used for seasonal aerodomes, and the villagers will be required to maintain the runway. And so you'll see that often for missionaries or in Africa, remote areas where they have a runway, and it kind of looks like a soccer field, just a patch of grass, and the locals are required to maintain it, and the aircraft are able to land, drop off supplies, and then take off. And so the difference with grass is that the grass is attached to the ground, and so the engine can't suck it up so easily. But with the gravel, it's loose stone, and so there lies the difference. Therefore, you need the gravel kits.
Right, but even if it did suck up grass, it wouldn't be as crazy to do so with as a rock would be.
Well, and that's
exactly.
And that's why I was asking that question, because and of course, like I said, I'm from Tennessee, so I've never seen a gravel runway in my entire life. And I was trying to kind of get to maybe a listener that's never seen that either. I appreciate that clarity, because for a while I'm thinking, what's the point? So now we know the point. So there we go. So moving on to ice runways, which obviously I've never seen one of those. You, Julien, most likely have.
Well, I haven't seen an ice runway myself. If you're I've seen it on YouTube or on the computer, but not in real life. But I've seen it on YouTube. You can look these things up, and the aircraft will land on the ice. So these are regular aircraft with wheels, and they just land on the ice. There's also so they'll land on runways, and they're just sheets of ice, and they're very in Antarctica. So some examples of aerodromes that would use this are the Phoenix Airfield and the McMurdo Station in Antarctica, and they're cleared sheer sheets of ice that are regularly monitored, obviously for thickness, because the weight of the aircraft has to land, and there's a lot of impact on that surface when the tires hit. So they have to make sure that the aircraft is, that the ice is thick enough to be able to support the weight and the impact of that aircraft.
Now, I've never seen any ice runways that were cold enough year round for that's where that is and that's where it exists and all that. But every year up here, there's plenty of lakes and things of that nature where the locals that have seaplanes, they'll get together with the town, and they'll all come together for the year. They'll all maintain what would be like a makeshift ice runway for that little community around the lake. And if you have a plane that's modified to do so with skis or whatever, you can take off on that runway, and it will function very much like you would see one of those little private runways where there's not really like a tower, so to speak, where like an official tower, but it's just they kind of like, hey, I'm coming in. Anybody there? No? Okay, right on. You just go. And it's very loosey-goosey, but I have seen those. It's over up in Greenville, Maine, which is very close to the center of Maine. It's a lake called Moosehead Lake. And they have others around, but that's the one that I've seen where they've put like a makeshift runway for folks.
Yep.
And it's usually run by the people that live on the lake. You know what I mean?
Well, this is correct. So that's for runways. And you'll see them often up in the polar areas. And, and so they sometimes use it for military operations, that type of stuff, and for medical supplies, humanitarian aid, that type of thing. And don't forget aviation tourism. Sometimes tourists fly to very remote areas and they go there to visit, and also scientific search and research. So sometimes scientists go to polar regions to do geological and thermal research for Earth and solar things, and they'll go to these areas. And
there's a lot of places like that up in Canada, up in like Labrador and all that. There's like a lot of places you can't get to outside of a seaplane.
That's exactly it. So you got it. So in those locations, you'll find ice runways.
Yeah, and with ice, there's also snow, Julien. So there's snow runways. Yes,
this is correct. So it must be compacted snow, however. So it has to be compacted, not fluffy snow. And you'll often see this with airplanes that are equipped with ski equipment for aircraft operations. So the aircraft have skis, and they'll land on the snow. I was watching an episode on the YouTube, and it was about these scientists. They would try to locate the magnetic north pole, the magnetic north of the Earth. And over the years, it moves, believe it or not. And so every year they would fly up north, and with the compass, when the compass starts spinning like this, then you're at the magnetic north, and it would move from year to year. And so they would pinpoint where the north was. And they did their investigations with the aircraft equipped with skis, and when this would happen, when the compass would spin around, they would land the airplane on the snow with snow skis, and then they would plant a flag and mark the ground. And over the years, they would see it move. And so this is very interesting.
It is very interesting.
How the Earth changes its magnetic fields, and it moves, so it's not the same. And it changes very much dramatically, actually, because, as you know, runways are marked by a number, and that number corresponds to the degree of deviation from magnetic north. And so if the magnetic north moves, then some runways that are 5 degrees from magnetic north, and now the north has moved to 6 degrees, then it changes the angle of approach. And so therefore the runway has to get a new paint job with a new number.
No way.
Yeah, 100%. And there's
that is very interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, and so there are documentaries on that where these people would go and explore these areas and mark, and the magnetic north pole moves to the point where they have to change the number on the runway. Now these are done by satellite, and so satellite or a drone will fly up and pinpoint where magnetic north is. And it can deviate up to 10 or 20 kilometers or 15 miles per year. And so over a period of 10 years, and that becomes a significant amount, depending on how far north you are, that can change quite significantly to the point where you have to paint your runway. Yeah.
Absolutely. And as we're talking about ice and snow, which kind of made me cold here on this rather warm June day, let's move on to suntan, or let's move on to sunscreen and waves, beach runways.
So beach runways are also an option. So there's a very famous airport that has a beach runway. It's called Barra Airport. The airport code is BRR for those people that are following airport codes, and that's located in Scotland. And it only operates on low tide, on hard-packed sand. And so when the tide is out, the planes can land, and when the tide comes in, then no planes can land. So it's very much the access and landing on that airport is very much contingent on high tide or low tide accessibility. And there's just small Cessnas or Cessna station wagons that small aircraft will land there. Yeah, basically it's for access to the beach. Yeah, and so this is a very interesting type of beach access. It also there are also aircraft that land on rocky surfaces, so like riverbeds, where you have bigger rocks, and those aircraft are equipped with jumbo tires, and so they just roll over the stones of the big rocks. So that's another
really
one.
Cool.
Yeah,
just rolling with it. I like that.
And roll right on the. They just roll right on the riverbeds. That's also an option. So you see all kinds of stuff. People land wherever they want, but it's not stereotypical. It's not for like it's not mainstream.
Right. And as we move on to water runways, as everybody know, if you'd listened to our last episode, I was just at a seaplane event for the 1494 chapter of the EAA up in Morristown down on Dandridge Lake called the Splash In. So, I know we talked a little bit about that on the last podcast, Julien, but what can you add to that as far as seaplanes? And I know up your way in Canada, there's a lot more of that than we see here.
So the water runways are often designated with a W. So runways, they will have the codes for a runway will correspond with magnetic north, and they'll have a W to designate that it's a water runway. So it's not a physical runway, it's a water runway. And there are many airports that have water runways, such as a Vancouver Harbor. They have a water runway, the Maldives Islands on seaplane bases. And up in the Charlottes, around the Hudson's Bay area, and around the East Coast, there's lots of access to seaplane activity. And so you'll see water runway seaplane access planes there. And the planes that land have these big floats on them, and so that's an easy way to be able to identify a seaplane. Once upon a time, I took a ride in a seaplane, and it's an amazing experience because it kind of bounces up like this a little bit, and then all of a sudden it takes off, and it has a steeper climb and a steeper descent. So it's a lot of fun to fly. For any of those who like aviation tourism, I highly recommend going down to Cole Harbour in Vancouver, where you can get onto a small seaplane and you take a fly around Cole Harbour, Vancouver, or Victoria. They have seaplane access, as well as Nanaimo and Comox.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and all those areas, they have lots of seaplane activity, and the views are just fantastic. So for those who have an extra $150 in their pocket, it's a dime well spent.
Oh yeah, and even that's not even that much money. That's easy to do because you're already in the mode of spending money when you're touristy.
Mm-hmm.
Might as well go for it.
Yeah, and Julien, something that I've always admired about you. I mean, we had you on this podcast a long time ago to talk about your book, and you started joining us on more and more podcasts. Now you've become a regular, co-host on this podcast, and your passion for aviation careers, I absolutely love it. So I want to talk for just a minute. So I know here locally at McGee Tyson Airport, there's an entire crew that works on the surface. They work on the concrete. That's their everyday Monday through Friday job. So let's talk a little bit about a career path to where you're going to be that guy that's out there, maybe even designing and working on runway as a career.
So the runway design and configuration is a very broad field. So it's not simply restricted to just the composite material of the surface. It also includes radio, lighting, lighting designs, navigational aids for runway approaches. For those people who have a very keen interest in runway design and you may want to study a degree such as a civil engineering with a focus on transportation and infrastructure development, and specifically for aerospace and runway design. And those courses could include pavement materials and design, geotechnical engineering, airport planning and design, environmental engineering, and some various certifications that might be required is the P engineering in Canada or PE in the United States. And you could follow training programs through ICAO and the FFA, training models in airfield design. So there's lots of information and courses available in aerospace design and configuration. And now with the new launch of the introduction of the Airbus 331 long range, this will open up a lot more opportunities for medium-sized airports across Canada and the United States for global connectivity. So you'll see an increase in demand in airport design and infrastructure development, as well as with the introduction of electric aircraft. So they will need their own surfaces as well as helicopter pads. They also need their own landing surfaces as well. So there's lots of opportunities for career growth in these areas.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much you can do in aviation, which makes it an absolutely beautiful thing. And folks can get a hold of you, and you can guide through you can guide through any aviation career. You can help anybody out with any part of it.
Well, this is absolutely correct. From A to Z, I've got you covered.
Absolutely. And we'll talk about...
You're like a tent company. You got them covered.
That's right. So we'll talk about how folks can contact you here in just a second. But speaking of runways and speaking of fun, I have a vacation planned here real soon to go back to St. Martin. As everybody knows, Airport SXM in St. Martin, where you can be the dodo that stands out there and get blue across the beach as planes take off. Which I'm sure many people.
You might not know the name, but you know that right there.
And I knew exactly what you meant. It's been 10 years since I've been there, and I spent the entire day standing on the beach holding onto a fence so I could be blown around by jets taking off. But something that and I'm going back and I'm really excited about it. But something that we don't think about, Julien, is, that's not the easiest airport to land at.
This is correct. So the airport is positioned in a very peculiar space. So that runway is, there's not a lot of space there. And so they have to build that runway right on the edge of the beach. And the airplane comes in just over the water and goes over like 20 feet of beach. And then I think there's a little road, and then there's a road.
Runway. Yes.
Yeah, there's a road, and then it hits the runway. And so it's a very low approach. And I believe that runway is also short. And so aircraft need to have a lot of thrust And so the big 747s, they gear up a lot of thrust, and this causes that thrust of wind that tourists just love. And
yes, we do.
I'm telling you, Derrick, if you ever make it down to St. Martin, make sure your girlfriend is there with you too, because I want to see a video of that. Hanging on to that beach.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I've been once. It's about 10 years ago I went, and of course we're back to Gulf Shores this year, but I think the next year we're trying to. St. Martin is a little harder for us to plan. Of course, Gulf Shores, Alabama, where we normally vacation, is only about 6 hours away.
Yep.
St. Martin's a different story when you're talking about a lot of family members and that thing. But yeah, back 10 years ago when I was there, really the idea of videoing that and all that wasn't kind of in place there. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I've seen some. I've literally, when I was there 10 years ago, I seen people getting thrown out into the ocean. Just boom, boom, boom. And, and there's videos all over YouTube if you look up St. Martin. And there's been I'm pretty sure there's been some aircraft that come in there really close from what I've seen on YouTube.
Where's little Susie? She's like, yeah. Like coming down with a little umbrella from the beach.
Yeah, and there is a little road there, and it's a very narrow road. It's a 2-lane road, and it's very narrow. But yeah, it was so interesting to sit here and learn about all the different runway surfaces. And Julien, if folks want to get a hold of you to get some career coaching in aviation, how could they do that?
Well, my first touch point is my website, www.julienmartinson.com. And I'm also on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And now I'm offering career coaching for hours for $500 Canadian. And for those people who are interested in any aviation career coaching services, don't hesitate to reach out to me directly.
Absolutely. And Shae, History of Aviation podcast, gosh, we got a store opening soon with all kinds of merchandise.
Yeah, I'm still working on it right now, but we're working on getting a Redbubble store open up, or seeing how simple or easy it would be to use the folks that let us host the site on their platform. We don't have a spot right now to house all the crazy stuff, but we are working on doing that now. This way we can get some really cool products out there and, get some things into people's hands. I mean, there's a lot of different opportunities there for sure.
T-shirts, keychains, backpacks, phone cases. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I even saw, there was one in there for a shower curtain and a bath mat. Mouse pads.
You know that's going in my bathroom, right?
Oh, 100%. Me too. My wife is going to go to the bathroom one night in the middle of the night and she's going to see that and be like, oh.
Well, as you can see behind me, the History of Aviation podcast hangs all over my house.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm proud of it, too. I am very proud of it. We've come a long way with this podcast, and we've worked very hard to do it and to get to the point where we are. And we are also on Facebook, Twitter.
We are.
You can see our short clips on TikTok. You can see our short clips on YouTube. And please go check out this clip that Shae put together for the splash in over on our regular YouTube channel. All those links will be down below. And I appreciate it, guys. Enjoyed it. Learned a lot about runways.
Yeah, there's actually a lot that I did not. The biggest one for me was the designation has to change if they learn that the magnetic north changes. I had no idea that was a thing, and that's really cool.
I did not know anything about gravel runways, and for a bit there I was like, okay, what's the point? And then finally Julien brought that point to me.
Right, exactly.
And that's the thing about this podcast, that I want everybody that listens to it and watches the short clips or watches the video, the important thing here is it's learning. I didn't know anything about gravel runways, and I was taught tonight about gravel runways, and we need to preserve history. History needs to be preserved, and aviation needs to be preserved. We are running up on a pilot shortage, and all these things like Julien has talked about so many times, and promote aviation, and it's what we love. We're all just a bunch of airplane nerds in it together, and I love it, and I'm proud to be one.
Yeah, to Julien's point as well, I don't think you can have aviation careers / futures if you don't first learn the history of where it came from. So you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you came from.
Exactly.
So it's really, really important to both of your points.
In closing remarks, for those people who are curious about the most challenging runways built, there's the Lukla Nepal Airport, which is built on a mountainside. It's high altitude with a very short runway. And Courchevel in France, which is sloped on the Alps. McMurdo Station in Antarctica has an ice runway. And of course, we mentioned the Princess Juliana runway in St. Martin, just meters from the beach. So without hesitation, there's lots of information about runways, runway configuration, runway design, and it's all available on the internet for those people with the most curious minds.
Absolutely. And for Julien Martinson, Shae Jones producing, I'm Derrick Beeler. Thanks for listening to the History of Aviation podcast.